Hello there. In this video, we're going to talk about some tips for teaching a CGCircuit workshop. First of all, make sure to watch the YouTube video that gives you a tour of how the system works. You can find this video by going on YouTube and search for CGCircuit Workshop Instructor Tour. Or if you're watching this video on YouTube, you can click on the link on the screen or in the description below. As the first day of the workshop approaches, you need to start thinking about the following things. What will the students need on the first day? And what questions will the students have on the first day? In order to help with this, we put together some tips that you can follow. However, you can always follow your own approach as long as students receive value from the workshop and they get their questions answered as soon as possible. The day before the workshop starts, you should send out an email to all students outlining the following. Tell students to watch the video that gives them a tour of the workshop system. They can just search on YouTube for the title CGCircuit Workshop Student Tour, or you can find a link in the description below. Our system should have already sent them a link to this video, but it's always good to iterate. What is the software you will be using during the webinar? Is it Zoom? Is it something else? Do the students need to install it prior to the first webinar? We recommend Zoom as a platform because the installation process for students is extremely fast and easy. Remind them of when the first webinar will take place and make sure to specify the date, the day of the week, the time, and the time zone. Make sure to let them know that the webinar will be recorded every week in case they cannot make it for some reason. Another thing you might want to ask the students is to not consume all videos of the workshop at once. Students will open up the workshop page and they will have access to all the videos in the workshop from the first week to the last. And most of the time they will try to jump ahead and watch all the videos, which is okay. However, you should probably let them know that each week of the workshop will focus only on the videos of that specific week. This is done in order to keep the workshop organized. The last thing to mention in this email is if there are any requirements, for example, any software versions or plugins or anything else you can think of that the student will need in order to successfully start watching the videos and do their assignments. We have found that not giving any assignments for the first week makes it easier for students to ease into the class and get used to the system. So if you're going to follow this method, make sure to let them know that the first week will not have any homework, but all of the videos in the first week should still be watched. If you have not done that already, make sure to download and install Zoom or any video meeting software that you choose. And make sure to schedule all webinars ahead of time. Make sure also that the webinar's dates and times are the same as the ones they appear on CGCircuit in order to not create any confusion. Let's now look at things to generally keep in mind when running a webinar. Let's focus for the first webinar for a second, as it is the webinar where students can ask you questions about the workshop, and it's also where you can get information about your students. One good thing you can do in your first webinar is to ask everybody their background and their level of expertise. This way, you will have enough information on how to deliver your feedback on their assignments. The other thing you may want to mention to your students in your first webinar is when they can generally expect to receive your feedback. For example, if you are able to work on student assignments only during the weekend, you need to set that expectation. The last thing you should probably reiterate in your first webinar is to remind people to not try and go too fast and watch all the videos in the workshop at once. Again, unless you want to run your workshop differently. And that's it for the first webinar. Now let's talk about webinars in general. So in general, to run a smooth webinar, make sure to always have a plan. Generally, students tend to not ask a lot of questions, especially if they're junior artists. So make sure you have a plan in place to still make the webinar a very useful and valuable experience for your students. Some examples can be: do a demo on different techniques that you may have used in other courses. Talk about industry news. Have a speech ready on how to prepare a demo reel or anything else useful that you can think of based on the level of expertise you have in your classroom. You can even invite a speaker who works in the industry who has relevant expertise. This does not necessarily have to be expertise on the specific subject you're teaching. You are the expert there after all, but more complementary information. This is especially useful if you have a class with students that do not have industry experience yet. In the end, remember that students are paying a high price to attend this workshop, so it is very important for them to get a lot of value out of it. And so try to make sure and anticipate what they might need, what question they might have, and try to help them as much as possible with any issues with content or assignment. Also, let us know if there is anything we can do to make the process easier or if students have any issues with the system. Thank you so much for helping and inspiring other artists. Cheers.